Rutio made a list.
Here goes!
What list? This one. I split the animation styles of the Z3 VTX games and put it in a rather messy Excel. Since it hasn't caught on, maybe it's already common knowledge, I'm gonna coattail the 30 name and make some predictions. Warning, to make that list, I watch SRW animations regularly. If there was a part of me that ever fully hated mainline SRW's animations, it's gone now through mere exposure. As such, this isn't the place where I dunk on these styles with no remorse. I will point out some negatives, but my overall opinion on them is positive. Feel free to announce how terrible these animations are, just don't expect much of that out of me. Also,
I'll steal it! No one will ever know!
That's it!
while it's tempting to go chronologically, I think it's best I tackle this from the reuse. Mazinger Z, Shin Dragon, Ray Earth, and Dawn of Thursday are all reused from previous games. Starting with Z, it is of the Godmars style, which I dub as Ancient. It comes with slow, sluggish movement and very detailed effects that animate in a similarly choppy frame rate. Check out these wind and particle effects. Next up is Shin Dragon. While I say it's reused, the attack certainly is. The top of Shin Dragon has been redrawn, and the whole thing is higher resolution than previous games. With that in mind, Getter has always had a similar look to the previous Ancient style, but it comes with more camera shaking, faster movement, and simpler effects. See the monochrome from most Getter hits, and as such, doesn't look as old school due to the lack of detailed effects. I call it Quake because of the shakiness, particularly in this effect they like reusing, this engulfed by the sun effect. Ray Earth. I don't care about Ray Earth. Ray Earth. While we haven't seen the rest of the rune gods, the flame god itself uses a style that's common for super type protagonists. Of note are the excessive hot lighting / bloom, both for the sprites and the effects, stiff motion with great poses, smear effects for sword swings and wind, and often used quick screen shakes on hit. Bit of a misnomer if you know what it means, but I call this the dynamic style. Might rename it to Brave, due to being super oriented. Finally, the Dawn. It retains one of the most basic yet smooth and consistent styles in the game. It's often used by Gundam protagonists, particularly Crossbone and Unicorn, and I can only describe it as modern. The sprites resemble high-definition 3D models. It has great detail on the sprites, particularly the lighting, but it lacks the unique effects as seen in other styles, with basic explosions and lasers. It's also a little slow in terms of sprite movement compared to other real-oriented styles. In exchange, it has the smoothest sprite movement and pose changes out of all the styles, hence the 3D-like nature of it. Now should be the time to segue to a new series in one of those 4 styles, but no, class is barely in session. I have to talk about Gaofaigar. From this intro animation to right before the cut-ins show up, it is reminiscent of what is mainline SRW's most famous style, Mr. Arios. I'm making a reference, you can't stop me. aka the hand-drawn style, air quotes included. Highly shaded sprites, constant frame-by-frame sprite movement, and actually hand-drawn effects. Smoke, lightning, explosions, the one thing you'll never see here is mirror frames. Those are for people with time constraints. Ignore that. And I guess their impact could use work. The animator usually just replaces any proper explosion effects with massive smoke. But after that is a pair of cut-ins and a familiar effect for those who have played T. I introduce you to effect stealing. While some effects are native to a style, sometimes an art style will borrow effects from others, usually to keep a series consistent with its explosions. This Nectar explosion, notably seen with Excess Sickness, was native to T's Gaogaigar style, and thus its side units get the explosion. There are some exceptions. Usually styles with distinct explosions will not be overridden, such as King Jader in T. So in a strange case, likely to reuse the side units without changing animations, Gaofaigar retains T Gaogaigar's explosions, along with similar looking cut-ins. You can see this later for a certain other unit, a very new unit, but first, for posterity's sake, Pasta. Give me a sec. I joke about Mr. Arios being distinctive, but this one, you'll know it when you see it. Extremely chalky sprites, sluggish but not choppy movement, cut-ins used for basically everything, Retro, mostly monochrome, choppy effects, all here. Also, this Z3 boom looks like a pizza, so I extended it to pasta, as the nectar explosions against Cygnus are yellow and circular like pepperoni. To be frank, this is my least favorite style. It works extremely well on boats, somewhat well on angle-heavy supers, but good luck making reels work proper. Yes, this is the Endless Waltz guy, but I call him Mr. Yamato out of respect for the good he... All of May's animals are dudes. He's done. I'm mentioning this one here because it seems to appear nowhere else in this latest trailer. There's no good place to mention this, so I'll do it before we dive into the rest. A single unit can have different art styles for different attacks, my favorite to mention being Zelgard, but most originals from Z3 to T do this, exceptions being Grungust honestly. And also what might be the biggest group project, Mazinger 0. Since we only see 1 to 2 attacks per trailer, there's a chance I'll be blindsided when a unit in the next PV does a new attack in a different style. So I warn you here in advance, I'm gonna get blindsided. Okay, now I'm segueing to the new series with the previous styles. I'll start with the most basic, yet packed, modern. Aside from the Dawn, I noticed 5 whole units. 5 whole units, all of them being main characters. This is actually standard procedure for modern, although there are other styles that are similar to it in terms of looks. I'll put the most confirmed ones aside first, so that will be Lancelot, the Guren, and the Huckvine. Could be wrong when it comes to Zeta and Apex. Zeta mostly because the beam pulse looks weird. While Apex has this weird movement at the beginning that doesn't line up as well, or what I expect from Bellvine. The explosion at the end could be a case of effect stealing too, as it could be borrowed from Phoenix, as the Unicorn units used modern. I'll still leave them here until...
That's it!
Next is... Duh. GRIDMAN fits the bill. The effects go so hard it's not even funny. Surprised to see actual smear frames here though, but the rest of it is typical Arios. Oh, and this is an Arios beam, no question. Considering the size, it's probably the second Neo Xiang. That's how it's pronounced. As for dynamic, or brave, pick out 2 units. One is J. Decker, whose visuals are so similar to Great Might Gaine's sword attack, even the blind can see it. Oops. And the other being Gao Gaigo. Gao's a bit unclear, but I'm putting it here on the basis of looking nothing like T. Gao Gaigar's choppy sprite looks, and the smear effect during the claw attack. Both are coincidentally Brave series, hence the name consideration, as was Might Gaine, but not Gao Gaigar, even in this game. It's Guy's time to get special treatment. Note, I do not care about Genesig all that much. Quake's next. We'll have to jump to the rapid fire cameos at the end, because it's time for a shot to come in. The full armor Hyakushigi Kai uses this style. I might be using effects too much to suss out the styles, but particle effects being borrowed are a rarity. On top of the sluggish but faster movement, the kick gives us a bunch of monochrome particle effects, along with shaking the enemy sprite. The wind points to either Ancient or Quake, but Ancient's winds are usually more detailed and thick. This isn't the first for Char, as outside of its finishing funnel attack, it used this very style for Nightingale. And no sign of the main Getter team, I'm afraid. Shin Getter might be a completely different beast compared to previous games. Now, Ancient. This is a big one. There's 3 units, one being quite obvious. The big ol' Mazin Kaiser Infinitism. That last syllable is spicy. Although X-Mazin Kaiser, last I checked, had a different style in its rocket punch compared to its other moves. I don't see much deviation between this and the typical Ancient style as seen in T. Mazinger. More poses on the hands are the only standout, but the frame rate isn't significantly different. And no, I didn't say big because this Mazin Kaiser is massive, because Amuro's Gundam is here. The Granddaddy Gundam.
Yeehaw!
Not have the usual wind effects, it still does on the screen borders, but the movement is sluggish, slower than Quake, and the beam effects at the end lean closer to Ancient style. On hit, not the beam shooting itself. The beam shooting itself is too ordinary, they're not detailed enough. But as for his new Gundam, yeah, that's tough. beams are ripped from Z3 New Gundam, so that's not helping. All we have is the low amount of pose changes coupled with particle effects and a sparkly after explosion. And there's the choppiness. Huh. They are mad. I'm certain. They put new in one of the slowest moving styles in the game. Even though it's another unit Mr. Arios is famous for. Oh dear. Okay then, time for something you don't care about. What style does the FMP units have? I say they share it with the scope dogs. Their sprites are good looking with okay detail, but they are defined by stiff motion? No. Lackluster choreography? No. The duck walk? No! Okay, maybe that last one. All the FMP units jump now. That's not what I meant. You see it yet? Smear frames. Every little motion and change in pose, as of V, they are all punctuated by smear frames. I call it Trooper because as of now, there's only 2 big series this style has done, and they're both using military style weapons. And yes, they are on the stiffer end, but they do know how to do firearm kickback. And their choreography is usually better than what their animation is capable of bringing to life. Unless scope dogs are involved. From my defense, you can already tell, but I'll put it out in the open. I like this style. It's a shame that there's very few units with it. The problem with it is that most of the time, it always looks like they're not given enough time to polish everything. The jump from Z3 to V is what we get when that polish is applied, but I do think the new TCLRS holds up well. The cargo looks fine. They actually addressed my problem with Levitane's knife attack by incorporating more mobility. The problem I have is that it goes by really fast. Look at these poses. I said they look good. And the thruster effects and the way they dissipate also look appealing. Now, look at it in full speed. I'm sure this is Ikaruga's weakest attack, but frame by framing the animations shouldn't be necessary to enjoy it. I'm defending one of the most hated styles of Z3. In case it wasn't obvious enough, I have a soft spot for SRW's recent animations, if not SRW in general. That's what the warning was for. Even this one. Yes, I'm skipping to the rapid fire cameo again. Order of appearance is not how I ordered this. Because these explosions are just as distinctive as the hand-drawn ones. Introducing Weightless, an art style with so few positives that my name for it is derogatory. Its movements are two-dimensional and are usually too slow. Its effects are cartoony, simplistic, and lack variety. Its choreography is average at best, and the poses are few and reused, with very few angles to add depth. Also this fade-in. Yes, there is a Knights and Magic unit, namely a Zendog, or Zendolin, they look the same.
That's the gist of it.
I know it's weightless, because those explosions are what I call electric booms, where the bright cartoony orange explosions are surrounded by thick blue-white electricity. Anyway, this has done some good in my eyes, but it's near impossible to defend. You do not want animations that are weightless, and this style makes everything feel like paper airplanes. All my skipping has shifted the first unit in the PV to the middle. Time for Combattler V, or 5. Here we have a style typically used by supers no one care about, but mostly the Muteki bros. Or is it Invinci bros? What's their colloquial name in English? They have basic explosions, screen darkening, and effects that are similar to another style, but with ample amounts of wind. Hence the name Windy. As of V, they've also ramped up their cut-in use, easily noticeable through all of the Evangelion additions in V. They have gone full force in 30 by turning an entire attack of EM yo-yos into moving, full-sized cut-ins. They're basically giant sprites now, hostile as a friend. I'll also add a rapid fire unit to Windy, namely the SRX. The cut-in for Gown Genocider! The cut-in for Gown Genocider moves in a similar lightweight way, and there's the win if you look real close. The next two have to be tackled together because 30's rendition has made them quite similar. First up, Belaki, aka you only know this from Black Sarena. It has quick movement across the screen with stiff poses, so it's on the smoother end. The effects are basic, but it's thick and chunky. The sound effects for them are usually muted. And I'm assigning this to V-. What? That's not smooth at all. Well, it retains this one angle, which I first saw in the mass-produced F91, the V version. And V- has that pose, and the effects aren't too far off despite the choppiness. That name comes from that angle I just mentioned, and the overall look of the MPF91 sprite. Where with T's version, for full effect, it looks quite blocky. So what does the second style have to do with this? This lady. I was originally gonna lump V- into this style, only to realize junk still isn't that choppy. Junk is the cheap style, no other way to put it. They have smooth-ish sprite movement, but some of the choppiest change and poses in the series. Its effects are usually stolen or otherwise basic, and they love the screen shake as much as Dynamic does. The resolution's also noticeably lower for these sprites. The only positives I can give are that their animations are perfectly paced, and the choreography isn't the worst. It carries far better impact than Weightless too, although it gets disorienting sometimes. Named Junk, my favorite unit in this style, the XX, is piloted by a scavenger. And Daitarn is a piece of... I call it cheap, not just for its quality, but also their frequency. Ichinana, Gunbuster, and Build Tiger all seem to use this style. Yes, Ichinana is a veteran, I forgot to mention him in the earlier section. Those cartoony sparks are pretty common to this style, though Blocky has similar sparks too. Could be a case of effect stealing on the V-Dash's part. There's a certain user out there that's rather miffed on FMP's playable units in SRW. I can see why. It was surrounded with two of the best looking styles available. One is hand-drawn, aka Mr. Arios. We've covered that. But the other, Mr. Belial. I dubbed the Rubble. Yes, I went with Belial because of FMP, even though this style was responsible for Mazin Emperor G and Double Zeta. See this debris effect? It's hiding all over the place. Hence Rubble. Aside from that, it comes with thick laser effects, beam, slight choppiness in movement, great variety of poses, and a sense of speed that's second to one. There's a sense of dusty weight or solidness to the sprites, though that might also be the sound effects doing. Where is it used in 30? Time for Gaine. About time I did that. Not one user was overjoyed to see Gaine in this style. Bit too overjoyed. Did claymation? Are you serious, my dude? The effects on movement were close to Double Zeta, so I'm rather certain. Also, Ashura Temple is here for similar effects, but it could be another style entirely, with effects stolen from the main unit Gaine. Along with Anti the Kaiju, for the similar lighting and dusty smoke effects. It could be Quake 2 from the Famitsu effect, or Pasta from this effect. Anti is... Holy shit, is that shit in Asuka? I thought this game couldn't get any more exciting. Time for the intermission, which is just as long as the rest of it. It's no secret that Masami Obari has worked extensively on SRW. 30 has brought him in to design the OG enemy mech. I mention him because, strangely, or fittingly, all of the units that carry his trademark look are all in the same style. Formerly known as the Circle Team, introducing the flat color art style. It's another easy one to pick off because look at these effects, which became really noticeable in Tengoku Hen. They're like massive brush strokes, all consisting of one or two flat colors with no gradients between them, hence the name. The actual sprite movement is as static and fast as Dynamic, Brave, but the lighting isn't as bright. Effects are what stand out though, that and the shortness of all its attacks. Gravelin unleashes a beam, and the effects retain their distinctively colored look. Also retaining one of its big problems, the effects sometimes don't look like they're in the same plane as the sprites, dimensional plane. Finally, for what's in the trailer at least, we have my favorite real-oriented style, Mr. New Arhan! Normal Arhan uses blocky, I checked, thrice. Previously known for the Macro 7 planes, we have the style that brings an absolute breakneck sense of speed. It's choppy, and the sprites are a bit stiff, but it's in service of going fast. It is Speedster. This is what Rubble is second to. It also comes with tasty angles and choreography, and features this one space background. Effects aren't too special though, it steals sometimes. Red 5 has it, but I think Blue 1 does too. I'm gonna extrapolate and predict that all Majestic Prince playable units will use this style. Doing Protagonist and T finally paid off. No more playing second fiddle for you. I say finally, but this leaves a few styles unaccounted for. Hostile is one we've covered under effect stealing, but the Hucky 30 actually steals animation from another style. The Leaf Slasher animation has bits stolen from the V Huckbind version. It's from a style I call wobbly, from the way the sprites constantly move. Pieces of the body move constantly, frame rate's a bit low, but not as cohesively as hand-drawn, making it the opposite of stiff, hence wobbly. The choreography is good, but often too short. I blame it on low dev time. And they have this cascading explosion effect that usually shows up. Also, the thick white wind effects. Sirbine's the unit I point to as the poster boy for this style, because my only alternative is the Nadeshko. Speaking of binds, we have the other Aura Battler style. It's a simple one, basically modern with less details but more speed. Named Quick. The effects are simple, unless Aura Road counts, and it often zips across the screen while retaining a smooth frame rate. Though it gets choppier when it goes even faster, particularly on the changing of poses. This one, I'm surprised it's missing. I consider it Windy's big brother, and he's heavy. The sprites are well shaded, it has the screen darkening, but its defining feature is this. The burst of speed, sudden stop. When it's in slow mode, movement is smooth and deliberate. When it goes fast, wind effects and smears punctuate the motion, with a sudden stops allowing you to soak in the cool poses of the unit. The result? An amazing sense of super robot speed. Wait! I don't even play that game. If it weren't for the box standard effects, you OG folk probably don't mind. This might be one of the best styles of the bunch, which is why it annoys me that I can't find any sign of it in T, aside from Gunbuster, and it is nowhere in sight for 30. Heavy's really cool. I call it Mr. Gainax, despite the EVAAAA units being in a different style.
Is the gist of it.
I did save the best for last. It's heavy. This last one doesn't count. It's defined by lots of sprite movement, but effectively no pose changes. Name, unparsable. Title, Mr. Intern. I've never seen a main character done entirely in this style, and I doubt I ever will. It doesn't even have its own effects. My list has a few more explanations, but I'll read off the important bits. Translation/movement. A sprite, for the whole unit, moving across the screen without rotating, which is changing the two-dimensional angle, or changing to a different sprite, or pose. aka movement across the screen. Smears. Effect lines that indicate quick movement. Gives off the same effect as the afterimage, not the scientific term, we see when something moves at high speed. Used mostly on weapon swings, but can be used for changing poses or to imply very quick transformation of sprites, such as rotating the sprite. Chop. Lower frame rate or less in-betweens. Changing from one sprite pose to another is instant instead of gradual. Smears mitigate this, but it might get distracting. See the Trooper bunch. Smooth. High in-betweens or frame rate, no teleporting poses. Pinnacle is modern or Mr. Unicorn, the opposite of choppy. Stiff. Lower amount of individual sprite pose and rotational changes relative to translation, moving across the screen. It may feel the robot look static, but you can hold on to a good pose. There you have it. A more visually appealing, condensed introduction to my long-ass list. Well, the list is only for units, so this actually is kind of required reading for that list now I think about it. I'm really excited for 30, in case you weren't able to tell. I'll be chomping out the next trailer as soon as it comes out. No promises on new videos though. I made this one as thorough as I could. This has been Brute. You know what the buttons do? I swear I had a music channel or something.
I'm too weak. Oh, don't kill me, please.